Hi, welcome. This is Learn to Do with Peter on May 3rd, 2024. And let me get started with the HackMD here. We've got somebody who's here for the first time. Kenneth is typing as we speak into HackMD in the top random notes section, which is awesome. Thanks, Kenneth. So this used to be called topics, and I'm switching it to living agenda on the last page that we had. This one, I guess. I started doing a rough time box, and I don't think we kept to this at all, but at least it's a way of kind of framing things and having some idea what we'll cover and what we won't cover. So I kind of like that. We're not to the point yet today where we even know what we're going to talk, even like we don't know exactly what we're going to cover. So I didn't start putting times there yet, but the idea, so anyway, I guess a long time ago, I switched from agenda as a header to topics, and now I'm switching back a little bit to living agenda because it might, the idea, the living part of it, it might change during the call as it did last time. And then I can still imagine maybe a topics for me always meant things we might talk about rather than things we're definitely going to talk about. So anyway. Kenneth, I kind of been watching you type here, which is cool. Yeah, if you're using .text already, then Obsidian is a great alternative. And one of the cool things about it is that you can get started for free. It's free for personal use and comparatively cheap for commercial use. And let me talk over the living agenda part here first. So first, kind of let's do check-ins and comments and ideas. Before we even got started, we were talking about prosopagnosia, which is interesting. A little bit, not a lot. And then I guess I'm going to kind of do the living agenda real quick for me, or I'll talk through this real quick as kind of my check-in, and then we can kind of go around the room and check in anybody else who wants to. So today I wanted to cover password managers real quick, probably for about 10 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes, no, 10 minutes. We had a request recently. Somebody was like, Pete, you should really cover password managers. And so I'm kind of queued up to do that today. Whether or not it's of interest to the room, maybe it'll be interesting on the recording. I also had a cool project for a friend. We made a landing page for a website, a quick landing page. And we did that with ChatGPT. So I kind of want to talk about that maybe. Making a header image for Mighty Networks is a write-up I just did. Where is this? It's a write-up I just did, and it might be worth talking about real quick. It's a lot of it is about aspect ratios and how to think about them. And since most of us deal with Mighty Networks, it might be useful. I've got a cool project with AI Futures book group. We're making a GPT, and I wanted to tell a quick story about an interview project that we're doing. And then there's a bunch of new Jankifiers that are kind of in the queue on my computer that we might want to talk about and publish or throw away. Coding with LLMs is maybe the big one today, along with Kenneth. I'm going to put Obsidian. That's a writing tool.
And I just remembered the other one that I was talking about. Yeah, you had mentioned the possibility of discussing LLMs on your local machine.
Yep. And that's this one here.
Okay.
Coding with LLMs and well, it's kind of funny. This item used to be local LLMs or something like that.
Okay.
It's kind of morphed into dealing with language model managers and language models, but it's the same topic.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of me, and what I was thinking we might talk through. Uh, Kenneth, anything else you want to let's I can stop the share maybe and we can talk.
Well, I was thinking that a text to plot and text to story, if anyone has any
Hmm.
experience with those.
Yeah. So let me write that down also in the agenda. And hi, I'm Pete. I'm from San Diego. I live in San Diego right now on unceded Kumeyaay land. How about you, Kenneth?
I'm Kenneth. I live in Arlington, Texas, between Dallas and Fort Worth, and I'm old. That's about me.
Nice. Thanks, Kenneth. RJ?
Hello, excuse me. Hello, everybody. Um, I'm here in New Jersey in the beautiful Watchung Mountains, which are really hills, but they call them mountains. And so I have a DSL connection, unfortunately. So if my voice is kind of garbly, sorry about that.
And that's also why RJ doesn't use this video. And I'm guessing Claire is not back yet, otherwise she would have unmuted and unmuted.
Claire is here. She's still waiting for her 9:30, sitting in the parking lot of the Eyeglasses Place in San Antonio, Texas. I don't know if
Nice.
it's ceded land or not.
Probably not.
Probably
Or
not.
probably it. So Claire, you've got to get off to your appointment at some point soon.
At some point, yeah. I'm not sure when at this point. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Um, so considering who's here and our kind of our shared interests, I think the thing that we'll probably really dig into is Obsidian and text to story and local language models. RJ and I have been super excited about coding with LLMs, but that might be something that that we can touch maybe a little bit, but maybe not a lot today. I might skip because we don't have, well, unless folks are really interested in password managers, like that was the thing I got myself all queued up on. I don't have it written down, but I've got all the things that I wanted to talk through in my head. Maybe I'll cover that really quick just to kind of spool that
Or you
out.
could wait until Danielle's on a call, maybe later the next call.
Yeah, it's top of mind right now. So I guess I don't have to take y'all's time to do that. I could do that by myself someplace else. Cool. So, so let me share my screen again. And let's see, I'd kind of like to figure out how to maintain this living agenda. So bear with me for a sec while I look at last week's notes. So this is, so the thing about the time stuff, you kind of want when it started, how long, and when it ended. And that's too much all at once. But so and then I have a whole thing about whether you put 0:30, and then you don't know if that's 0 hours or 0 minutes. So I kind of like the H and the M here. Let's kind of say this started at 0 hours and 0 minutes, and then we're switching on to text to story at 10 after. Then the other confusing thing, if I guess, so then is this time relative to the call start or relative to like clock time? We started on a half hour, so I guess I'm gonna do it this way. Okay. Sorry for that overhead. It's gonna be worth it at some point. Kenneth, I wonder, let's dig in on what you mean by text to story.
Well, it's kind of like,
Kind of like text to image or text to
yeah,
video.
kind of like text to image, except the output, instead of being a different mode where you picture, it's the same mode. You still text, but you might say something like, I want to write a story about a little girl who goes with her grandfather to the baseball game and catches a ball.
Yep.
And it would flesh it out. It would add characters, talk about what it is to go into a stadium. Yeah, the same kind of expansion of
Yep.
what you would see happening with a text to image, except it's just in more text.
Yep.
I know that they're out there, and the ones I've seen are really, really bad. So I'm hoping someone has experience with something that's not really bad.
Yeah. I've done a fair bit of that just natively with LLMs. That was one of when I was teaching myself LLMs, right after ChatGPT got started. You can do that pretty well just with ChatGPT. I want to make a story about, sketch out the plot of, it doesn't have the, like, it doesn't have the built-in framework, but you don't need the built-in framework if you provide, the framework of decomposing story into whatever.
Yes, you can do it natively,
But you might as well have a tool. Yeah, I get
if
that.
there is some, I mean, if there's something out there, you might as well try and see if it's any better.
In that context, a thing that was super helpful for me was really early on, I found a way to export conversations from ChatGPT into Markdown and then into Obsidian. So, you could have a set of conversations with ChatGPT and capture them all quickly and easily into Obsidian, and then continue to work on it from there. So that was when I was doing native stuff, writing stories or story outlines or whatever. That capability to export things was really useful. So let me put
Yeah, that's not a bad alternative. Like I say, I've been doing some of that by exporting it out as text, either
yep.
individual session responses or the entire, as much as possible, the entire session.
Mm-hmm.
But
I can show you the way I'm doing it, and it may or may not, work for you, but it automates, I guess, or it automates a lot of the just information management, text management, and then semi-automates, I guess. So I can show you how I do that, and that would be a good thing to have on the recording too. Let's talk real quick. We're working on local LLMs and LLMs in general. I wrote this up. This is notes from 417, and one of one of the things that we don't all have, and that I think everybody should have, is local LLMs and then GPT-4 access or better for cheap. And so you can do that. The way that we've kind of been looking at doing that is with a third-party front end and API access to GPT-4. The LLMs, even the commercial LLMs, are really cheap if you're hitting their API instead of $20 a month retail front end. And that has led us on to LLM managers, model managers, and things like that. So then it's not an obvious thing, or it's not obvious that you would need to even specify this as a thing that you need for your LLM, but having a chat interface is not necessarily a given. The foundation models and the models that they kind of ship under the hood don't naturally chat, actually. So the fact that it knows how to chat and knows how to take turns and be in a conversation with you is one thing. And then another thing is just the user interface that allows you to do that with the LLM. So we kind of take for granted that, I can just say, I can say whatever I want to ChatGPT and it has a conversational reaction to me. That's a bit of work to make sure that you can get that, with a local LLM or with API or something like that. And then the ChatGPT interface it feels obvious and like straightforward. The fact that you can go back and forth with a thing, the fact that it prints as it's thinking, kind of, it has copy controls. It has a list of previous conversations. All that stuff are features that some UX and tool design team did at ChatGPT, and it's really nice. It looks obvious, but it's not obvious to get it like this. So we'll see other chat interfaces that are kind of good and bad. A thing that I guess, so then the main thing that ChatGPT Plus is missing for me is this export function. It's got very simple export, one at a time, but this export thing does all of them at once. So I guess here's the next one. You ought to be able to export your conversations, and then it should be easy to use and ideally open source if we can get it. So this is kind of, as we're looking for local LLMs and tools like a Storywriter or something like that, this is a set of things I want to keep in mind. And we can also kind of keep track of, make sure that this is up to date over time as we go. So back on 417 or whatever, I started off with a list of model managers. And these end up being kind of one of the best ways to interface with large language models, including local ones. So we'll come back to this maybe in a sec. The reason I got to this page was this one here. This does kind of exactly as you described. And it's a hybrid thing where it's a tuned model that's good at writing stories. And it's also a small set of agents that drive the overall, back up to here, arbitrarily long story generation. So I have not actually played with this, but even just reading this page is informational and instructional and really thoughtful. So this diagram here is kind of just what you said, I wish I could, put an input in and then, have a workflow at least for breaking that into a whole book, a book-long thing. So just the way that the designers has thought about it and broken it down into sections is super, super useful, right? He's got the same thing kind of in prose here. Our agent decomposes stories into, so this isn't kind of, well, I don't know. This is the same as you described, but having had somebody write it down and then go, okay, well, now I know what I was doing with ChatGPT when I was just doing this by hand. And if I was keeping track of this stuff in Obsidian, I've got a model for how to do that in Obsidian, and I could do it by hand, right? Even with native ChatGPT. So I think this is really useful. I will copy this. So a thing that we'll do, I'm going to make a new section called text to story. And I could put it down at the bottom, or I could put it here. I'll just put it at the top. Maybe that's a little bit better. And then I can, I think, so if I copy this, it's going to be an HTML. I wonder if it's, yeah. A couple ways I could have copied this link over. I didn't do the best one, but I didn't do the worst one either. So turns out also in this list, there are a couple other things that you might want to explore. I didn't get very far at exploring these, but I was doing kind of the research along the same line that you've got there. I want to write a long thing. And if you explore around DreamGen and Silly Tavern and Cobalt, there's people are doing a lot of work on AI storytelling, I guess. I'm not sure exactly how I would describe the field. One of the things that you find really quickly is that it's not a very interesting link, although, I mean, this is kind of like a little bit raw research. If you start poking around here, you'll find really useful stuff.
You say,
And part of the,
excuse me, DreamGen
yeah,
is only on your local machine, or is that something I can go out and play with a chat model up today?
that's a really good question, and I was just about to go there. It's a hybrid thing. So it's open source, I think. And it's also somebody is running. I scrolled away from. I scrolled away for. Sorry. It's an open source thing, and somebody is running a hosted version of it. So this is a freemium thing. The place where you're asking a question, the answers that you seek are a place where I probably wouldn't have gone right off, but it makes sense to go here. So if you're looking for cheap LLM, maybe free, maybe API or something like that, the open source models are really good now and run on your local machine. So you might end up with open source LLM. One of the reasons people use open source LLMs is because they want to be private, or they want it to be free, or they want to tweak it and hack it and participate in a community that's tweaking and hacking the model. So the private part of that means that open source models are also uncensored, and you can talk about steamy fanfic or whatever. So it turns out that people who want to talk about steamy fanfic or topic off limits and stuff like that, what that means is there aren't any guardrails, which may or may not be important to you, but it's also going to be open source mostly, generally. So these are our peeps, even though I don't care about writing fantasy fanfic about vampires or Coco the Librarian. The fact that they've got a story-tuned model and framework for writing stories means that these are kind of my peeps. So then the other thing to notice real quick, and I don't know if DreamGen is the best place to try this, but maybe Solar Tavern is, maybe it's not. Silly Tavern is code that you run locally, and there's some other like it's forked from Tavern, and you know there's I don't know there's some I know less about well where I was trying to get to, and I'm a little bit I didn't get quite to the page that I was thinking of, so keep digging around in the research here, but there's it's an interesting thing, but with an LLM, with a powerful LLM, there's not a lot of difference in the infrastructure for writing a book or making a role-playing game. They're kind of the same thing. You want to, in either one, you want to have defined characters and, persistent over time. You want to have scenes and, hey, Danielle, scenes and narrative and overarching narrative and stuff like that. And a role-playing game or role-playing, it's not really a game, is a lot like just a story that is unfolding in real time instead of having been written down, right? So this, this right here, role play and talk with multiple characters. If it's, I don't know how much DreamGen has got a backstory and narrative kind of going on, but it's kind of the same thing. So this surprised me when I bumped into the fact that, continuously invented role playing is a lot like a story that's being written. They're kind of the one and the same. So you find people on both sides of that, and then anywhere in the middle, right? And so this is new since I've been here, but you can imagine. It always gets scary when you go to a new place and you see like to show NSI, I don't want to see. Here's so the people using Silly Tavern, and they think of it, or at least this for the straights who end up here, they call it an LLM front end for power users. It's really an LLM, or it's a front end for storytelling and role playing and things like that, story generation. So then they had the need with their user community to do character cards. And so you can imagine people are just inventing characters and swapping them around, and hey, use mine, and share yours and all that kind of stuff. I remember I remember last time we kind of wandered into this part of the part of AI and story. I said, don't get lost with the AI. Make sure to interact with real people, not just characters and from character cards. 5 years from now, it's like really, it's hard to imagine where this is going to go. Cobalt is a whole, I had a hard time figuring out which was the front end and which was the model manager and which was the whatever. So that's why these aren't linked. But it's also maybe in here was where I got the real sense that a story, a written story and a role playing is almost the same thing. Okay, so Kenneth, if I were you, I would dig in on Goat Storytelling Agent, and even just having that framework is super helpful. So, so let's look at Danielle. If I could ask, how long are you here, and
I just got here. I don't have the link.
do you, do you have to leave?
No, I
any
don't have to
particular
leave.
time? Let me grab the link. So that's the HackMD link.
Okay, thank you.
While you're still unmuted, I was wondering about doing a show and tell with a landing page that
Okay.
that I worked on recently. Would that be okay?
Sure.
And the other thing, inspired by discussion with you, Danielle, was I was thinking about talking about password managers.
Oh God, please, yes. Gosh. And when you, if you are going to share the landing page that you helped me with, I was going to try and create a professional email for that, for Fold Rush, and it wanted me to add a, I forget what it's called, not a DNS, but one of those things where it wants you to prove that it's your website.
Yep.
And
Yep.
since you had me put those other ones in,
Yep.
I don't know, it was giving me trouble and I couldn't prove. Anyway.
Text security,
Mhm.
HTTPS.
Anyway,
No,
whatever. Figure it out.
we'll come to that one.
We'll figure it out
I
later.
think I know what she's talking about, and it's not just HTTPS, it's something else. Okay, so let's bridge over from text to story to language models, and wow, so I have to put this in order if I want this timing stuff to work. Okay, so now we're at 42, right? It's kind of funny. I really want to dig into local language models and stuff, and we keep getting vanishingly close to talking about it, but we end up not talking about it quite. But let's make another step, I guess. So I think it was on that 417 page, which is maybe this one. The selection, well, the original story of this was, hey, it would be nice to use a local LLM. And like a year ago, the way to do that was to find a front end and then connect it to your local LLM. And we've actually practiced a little bit writing our own front end, playing with a command line based front end, things like that. The current state of the art is actually to use a model manager, I think, something that helps you connect with a bunch of different models and then has a chat front end as kind of an afterthought almost. So the ones that I've been looking at are LM Studio and Jan. I finally found the place where they talked about how to pronounce this, whether it's Jan or Jan. If you think of Jan like in January, that's the canonical pronunciation, but they're cool with Jan too. And then GPT for all, and then another one is Olama is another good one. And I think Simon Wilson's LLM is another good one, but it's command line only. Olama has a web front end. Okay, so let's go back over and do that a little bit more slowly. Let me do a cheat thing here. It turns out on any massive wiki, if you're looking at the HTML page, you can go up to the URL line and add .md, and you see the original markdown source. So then I can copy this markdown rather than copying the HTML text and poof. This is a really useful and handy trick, and also a demonstration of how powerful that markdown ecosystem is. But I don't, well, I won't explain it more than that right now. So Jan is, oh, I was going to write Olama. And Melissa's LLM, but command line only. Jan is kind of useful, I think, for what we're talking about. But they're on their way to making a AI powered operating system, basically. So they want your whole computer to be AI. You can actually set up LM Studio as a backend for Jan. So I think Jan is not quite what we're looking for. GPT for all is really nice. It's not as pretty as LM Studio. It's so it's looking more and more like the thing that we want to focus on is LM Studio as we kind of dig into this. And so let me fire up my LM Studio. Here's Jan, LM Studio, and GPT for all. Let me fire up LM Studio. I will skip the update, even though I probably shouldn't. Actually, that update is really important, which I'll get to. So here's, so you know, again, the thing that I was looking for was I just want to chat with an LLM. You know, how hard can that be? So when you fire up LM Studio, it's actually got this whole, it's kind of like an app store of models. So this is a highly curated set of models. You can go to Hugging Face and look at these and find tons and tons and tons, hundreds, maybe thousands of models. They've done the job of kind of like reducing the noise down to a dull roar. And so, you know, the top ones here are probably the ones you want to play with. Mistral, I don't know about Stable Code. We'll come back to that one. Llama 3. Llama 3 is the current hotness. And I've been watching LM Studios Discord, I think. They keep tweaking, kind of like making sure that you can run the smallest, most powerful thing. And they've had to do some LM Studio updates to make sure this works and things like that. So so right now, if I were playing with LM Studio, Llama 3 is probably a good one to work on. One of the, there's a couple jargon, there's a number of jargon things that you need to learn with LMs, and maybe some other day we'll talk about jargon and make a glossary. One of them is GGUF. That's a format for wrapping up a model so that things can use it, and they only work, LM Studio only works with GGUF. There's other ways to do that. Another thing to look for is, I guess, in any of these, there's the name, the version number, how many parameters. This 8B stands for 8 billion. They also have 70 billion. 70 billion parameter model is starting to get hard to fit on your machine. So that's why they've kind of got, for free download here, they've got the 8B one instead. Instruct means that it's been tuned to be to follow instructions, and that's the step right before being a good chatbot. So then you can also see this one code is going to mean that this one is good for programming. People have been saying good things about Gemma, I guess is how to call this. And the 2B, this is smaller. It's only 2 billion parameters, but it's going well. Microsoft's Phi is the same thing. This is a tiny, you know, comparatively tiny. These two, Microsoft and Google, are making these to be able to run on phones. But if you had an older machine or something like that, you might be playing with these. Danielle?
So you could download one of those right now to your phone, or would you have to upload it to your computer, then like maybe
You don't
airdrop
you don't run these on your phones yet.
Okay. But the whole goal is to
can-
eventually be able to, maybe?
Yeah, later this year.
Like, would you maybe be able to airdrop it to your phone eventually, or how would you get it to your phone with an Apple?
You would
It's
go
just a
to the App
thought.
Store.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Apple's doing their own thing too, right? So Apple's in the same race that Google and Microsoft are. Apple's going to have, a LM version of Siri or whatever running on their phones. I would, if they don't do it sometime this year, and it could be late this year, but if they don't do it sometime this year, they've lost the race, I think. It's these are going to be on phones later this year. Right now, you don't really run them on phones. I'm sure. I actually know people that I don't know them personally, but people are definitely running stuff like this on phones right now. But it's a developer thing. So anyway, so then let me show you not just the front page of the dashboard of LM Studio, but kind of the maybe a main part of LM Studio that you would use. So this is the equivalent to ChatGPT Plus and its chat interface. So this is the chat interface that LM Studio supports. And they'll let you pick whatever models that you've downloaded and then have a conversation with it. So I can say new chat and select a model. Let's do Phi. And then I can say, just like ChatGPT Plus, I think this is I have not played around with, I've played around with LM Studio a total of about 10 minutes, maybe less, mostly during calls. I have not sat down and played with it. And what you're seeing here is an interesting thing. This is the small 3 billion parameter Phi from Google. A lot of these things, by the way, the bloke is a packager. So he or she is somebody that gets kind of the raw model from the research lab. They've probably published it on a Hugging Face, and then they repackage it. The bloke is probably the person who changed this to GGUF for whatever reason. And then they republish the open source thing with their name. They're not trying to steal Google's thunder here or Mistral's thunder. But it tells you, I've learned to trust this person and the job that they're doing of packaging these things. So if you look back here, this is published by LM Studio Community, Bartowski, News Research. So, and then here's, or Quan. You get to kind of know and trust the people who are doing a good job packaging stuff. So that's part of shopping around for which model to use. And you'll find, wherever, whatever discussion forum you use, you'll find people saying, I've got this application or I've got this kind of computer, what's the best models? And they'll rattle off the model name and probably the person who's publishing it too. So anyway, a thing that we've run into here is this is not really a chat bot. It knows how to, I think it just completes stuff. This particular model is not quite tuned to be a chat thing. It's tuned to be a completion engine. And so if I give it a thing like this, it doesn't quite know how to complete it. And I guess actually it did a cool thing here. It expanded this. Why is, what causes is maybe a better way to say it. And then it added a peer in there, which is really cool. And then during the day. So, and then it knew to put the question mark at the end, which, so it didn't just do a simple concatenation here. It actually kind of rewrote it, but it rewrote it as a reasonable completion of this, expansion of that. It didn't try to answer it. So to get the answer, I needed to do it this way instead. So for your purposes, Kenneth, maybe this was enough of a detour to kind of go, huh, that goat storytelling thing, it looks like it's all integrated and it's supposed to work as a storytelling thing. Certainly you could kind of go through here, find the right models, get set up to chat and all that kind of stuff. But maybe goat storytelling is the place to start. It would also be totally fine to dig in and get familiar with how to shop for the good LLM, how to get the chat working. There might be, we talked about Silly Tavern. Silly Tavern, let me back up for a sec. There are a number of systems for running a local LLM that provide a kind of an API interface that runs on your computer for it. So the usual way that people, or the way people have been running stuff for a year and a half, is you download the model, you do a bunch of weird Python voodoo, or you're running a Colab notebook or something like that. You do a bunch of voodoo to get the model running, and then maybe you've got another layer that provides access to the model, and then you actually have applications like a storytelling, a storytelling thing that's going to do the agentic stuff of keeping track of the overall narrative, the characters, and then the chapter list, and then the chapters, and the sub chapters and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the usual model. So I think even LM Studio has a couple different ways of, maybe only one. It has a way of not only helping you choose the models and making sure they run, but then by nature, kind of, it has API hooks that will allow other compatible applications to work with the language model directly instead of through a chat interface like this. So that might be kind of the architecture that you're going for. All of that stuff is open source and janky and hard to get connected, and the connections can break because it's all under development, and you're getting into the bleeding edge. The beauty of using LM Studio is somebody's written this beautiful front end that lets you choose a model and then just click a download button, and then they manage all the weird voodoo stuff to get it running and going and accessible by their front end, their chat system, and probably some of the other front ends, more custom front ends. So I hope that's kind of a forward path to help you get going. That's probably deep enough for today. And let's check out where we're going next.
Just a couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
Is GOAT also a completion model where you have to type in half of a sentence, or is it a to and from response query?
I missed the one that you're asking about.
GOAT.
GOAT. So
or do you know?
I don't. But the promise of it is that it's actually a whole system. So the good news is I think it's a good question. I actually don't know at all, and I shouldn't try to BS an answer.
Okay.
RJ.
Go ahead, Kenneth. Kenneth, you had another question?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Go
The
ahead,
other
go
one,
for it.
I have an 8-year-old machine that's my home machine as well as any research machine that I do. Uh, it does have one GPU and it is old. How much of my machines is it going to take up? Do you know? When it says it takes 4 gigabits, gigabytes, does that mean it's actually
That's,
going to translate to that much storage in my disk space, or can you
yeah.
help me
Yeah,
on
it
that?
takes that much disk space. And then there's also an implication of how much RAM it's going to take. It's not directly 4 gigabytes, but the bigger models need more RAM too, not only disk space but RAM. And then another thing is how fast it will run. So they measure that in tokens per second, kind of tokens per minute, probably tokens per second. Older machines typically can run stuff, and sometimes you use quantized models, it's called. Uh, but it slows down. So ChatGPT Plus, you get used to the speed at which it uh, and and 3.5 is a lot faster, but you kind of get used to it. This is about as slow as I'd want a bot to go. If you got an older machine, your bots will run even slower than that, and they can run really, really slow depending on how much you're trying to do and how old your machine is. But I've seen, people playing around with models and it types a few letters at a time, and it could take 5 minutes or 30 minutes to type all of this. So you probably want to play around with cloud stuff more than local stuff. And there's actually a way to run models through Hugging Face. I'm not really good at that, but and I was hoping that if we went to Hugging Face for Goat, we would find it here. Yeah, so here you go. You can run it on inference endpoints. At some point, some of running stuff in the cloud you can do for free, and some of it starts to be paid. This one it's a bad sign. Serverless uses less resources than dedicated, and it's cheaper. So I'm guessing that this is already for pay. The other sad story here, and I'm sorry well, I don't know, that just the model that they've got of how this thing works is really, really worth digging into and trying to find people who have done videos or something, walkthroughs of this thing. Just seeing it in action, even if you're not driving it, would be super useful to kind of your quest. So it's kind of funny, oh yeah, you can, here's how to use it. Self-hosted via transformers, I don't even know what that means, or use with spaces, I barely know what that means. But it's like, oh, yeah, okay, this is the Python code that gets this is a tiny, tiny part of what LM Studio is doing for you. It's doing this kind of stuff. And this looks like this, I don't use PyTorch and stuff, so I don't exactly know what to do with this. This I actually could do something with, but only if you're a Python coder is that useful. Uh, yeah. So the thing to do is, just start searching. This, even if it doesn't end up being the one that you end up using, and oh wow, the bloke has got a GGUF version of it. So theoretically, we could load this in LM Studio and maybe chat to it. I don't know. But you can also say, hey, I know this is, a couple steps up the thing that I want, and here's the kind of question you can find using, that. What other things are people doing? So these answers would be good. This answer would be interesting. And, doing reading more about this will tell you either more about how you can use it or other things that you could use. RJ, did you have more to add?
Yes, I just put it in chat. So Sam, who you probably heard on Kyle's calls, the Tuesday every
Yep.
other week calls, um, he has a lot of experience using local LLMs because he has a lot of hardware, high-powered hardware,
Yep.
and a lot of memory. So he's able to download these things like crazy and try them all out. And it would be interesting if we could try to get him on a call when he's available and have him share some like a nutshell or whatever summary of his experiences with local LLMs because he's used them a lot for image generation and also he's used them for, I think, sort of gaming and storytelling and a whole bunch of different things because he's really uh, investigating all different ways of using LLMs in general. So it would be really cool if, because I know he would love to interact with the AI salon, but he hasn't found a topic so
Yeah.
far that people are technical enough to be want to listen to.
Yeah.
And this would be one. And he also, if you want to learn about local LLMs for image generation, he's a heavy stable diffusion user. So he knows all different ways to use stable diffusion, not only for image generation, but also for video stuff. So um, if you want to start to branch out also in using stable diffusion for image generation, he would be a really great person to try to schedule a meetup when he's available so he can, show us some stuff that he's learned.
That's awesome. That's a great recommendation, RJ. And I'll reach out to Sam. Um, uh, and it won't be until the latter half of May.
That's okay.
Um,
That'll give people a chance to get their high-powered machines that they're going to need.
right on. Um, uh, awesome. So let's do a short thing on password managers, partly for Danielle and partly to read it into the record and partly to set us up to do it in better the next time. And partly because I've got it queued up in my head. So let's talk about password managers and try to keep it to 6 minutes. 5 is too short. 6
I
is
have my
kind of too
notepad
short,
ready,
too.
okay? I got my notepad right now.
And can I ask if these are cloud managers, I'd like to know why we should trust them.
Yeah, that's a great question. So um, there's only like a couple that I actually trust and recommend. 1Password, Bitwarden, and KeePass. With a caveat.
Danielle, could that thing that they were trying to get you to have before you could continue, could that be public-private key encryption code?
It's a good guess. What she needed to do was to just set up an email on her domain. And to do that, she needed to put the right DNS record in her DNS records. And so she got stuck somewhere between that instruction and getting it actually going in GoDaddy. So hmm. Um, it's funny. Let's see. I wonder I can do this maybe in Strikeout. LastPass is a commercial one, kind of the same quality as 1Password or Bitwarden. Don't use them. They screwed up in a couple different ways, and they're in the doghouse right now, and they might get their way back, but don't use it. I feel really harsh saying that, but they deserve it. Sorry, guys. They a little bit, well, it is a little bit longer story, but they need to re-win a lot of people's trust, not just mine. So then the probably okay ones are your OS, your browser.
Maybe it's naive, but I just use the Google Password Manager.
Yep. So that's not your OS and it's not your browser.
No, because I use it on my Apple phone and on my computer. and
So
it's
we'll
my
call that
browser.
a cloud platform. I should put Microsoft here, but I'm not going to because of ease of use. It's kind of funny. These are in Let's Talk About instead of Don't Use. This LastPass, they messed up bad. Danielle?
So what I have currently been doing is I put my passwords in my Notes app on my iPhone. That's what I do. And then if I need to find one, I search for it. Like, I mean, usually I mean, I'll save some of them on like, Google's whatever, but there are ones that like because I have several emails, not several, like 3 that I mainly use, but I'll save them in my Notes app on my, and I'll
Yep.
put like what email address it coordinates with.
Same.
Yep.
You do that, Claire?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah, I do that also, but not on my phone. And I have it in an encrypted file. So, I have to type the password just to get into one file. And I could also keep that in the cloud, so I can always access it too. And I've been doing that since day one. So it's like I've
Yep.
always sort of done it that way, and it's been working, and I didn't really have any reason to switch to a cloud or other provider because I don't, why should I give somebody else my password?
Yeah, exactly. Um,
And in fact, I don't, I
Wanna look
I
at one?
think that in many ways it violates agreements that I have, like with my bank and so on. I
yeah.
never really looked whether they updated it, but in the beginning they said you're not supposed to give your password to anybody. Now I don't use these password managers, so I don't know whether they updated the terms of service, but you would think that would be part of the consideration too, perhaps.
Yeah, it's, well, obviously they're not going to hunt you down and
No,
fire
no,
you as
but
a
what will
customer
happen
because,
is if a password manager provider gets hacked
yep.
and then your bank account suddenly disappears, Your bank can say, well, you gave you the password to the password manager, and we have in our terms of service, you're not supposed to do that, so it's your fault.
Yep. Um,
I had never thought about that.
that's kind of why, like, yeah, great observation, RJ. That's kind of why you see warnings in places that's like, why are they giving me that warning? You know, like slip and fall warnings on a grocery store or something like that. It's like because they want to be able to point to it when you're saying them, and they say, look, we told you, we warned you. Um, uh, so um,
Somewhere between
so yeah.
somewhere between requirements and nice to have encryption.
I'm going to count that as secure for your situation. Um, so I started this section already before we got on the call. So let me copy this into here, and then I'm going to make this smaller subhead of that. There's a security expert, Bruce Schneier, who's been doing computer security forever, and he's kind of the guy who wrote the book and gave us a lot of frameworks for thinking about things. And I guess I'm torn a little bit. I guess this is the source that I'm going to go back to for like thinking through security models, basically. It's not that tricky actually. So he's a very technical person, but he's actually got a really a blog where he writes very plain language stuff. And right now he's thinking through the security implications of AI. He's got some really interesting stuff. His blog is really worth reading. It's not that hard. So he's got a couple books. They're also for lay people. He's also got like expert level stuff that is not for lay people. These are two chatbot answers that I got because I needed a summary of what he said. Basically, he's got a thing like nothing is absolutely secure, and so what you do is you think through the potential problems that you could have, and then you look at the potential solutions that you could get, and you do a cost benefit trade-off basically. So it's not that much different than any kind of business analysis, but he's recast that to think about security. And let's see, I'm going to change this to resources. Sorry, sorry to get distracted, squirrel. But there's another thing I want to put here too, which is correct forest battery staple. I don't think I'll cover that right now. But anyway, so if you think about Bruce's model, what do I need to do to make sure my passwords are safe? And then the next part of that is from what, right? So a lot of the rules or a lot of the guidelines for password management in general come from environments where computer science environments where people needed a lot of security, and there were a lot of attempts to crack those passwords or whatever, steal the passwords. Usually passwords get stolen. and actually sometimes you get fooled into telling somebody your password. So that's a thing to watch out for. So a lot of them aren't, like there's a thing that says you shouldn't put passwords on sticky notes in front of your monitor. And it's like, well, the problem with that is if a thief breaks into your home and steals your sticky notes, then you've got problems. You've got problems. They've got your passwords and you don't. You know, they can hack into your bank account and steal all your money or whatever. So, but to do that, probably a random thief isn't going to break into your house. So maybe your passwords are actually reasonably secure if they're inside your house. You probably don't want that same solution in a coffee shop. You get it from, so that's a place where the sticky notes in front of your monitor, you wouldn't do that in a coffee shop. Maybe you would do it at home. The Notes app on your phone is kind of the same thing. It's like, yeah, it's probably secure enough. Like, who else can break into your phone? And if you left your phone, if you lost your phone in a taxi, or left it behind in a cafe, have you just exposed all of your passwords, and somebody picking it up is going to, maybe not. So it's a thing to think through. The other class of people that need to worry about stuff are people in high threat environments. Journalists is a classic example, or employees at a bank or something like that. Some people, most people don't, but some people have specific threat actors, we like to say. Somebody from another country is going to figure out how to buddy up with this person and cause them to, help them drop their phone in a taxi, and then they're going to take the phone, and if the passwords aren't encrypted, they've got all the passwords, right? Even more likely than that, with all the spam that you get in your email box, some of that spam might be somebody trying to introduce a worm onto your computer that can either directly steal your passwords, or let somebody else watch as you type on your computer, and capture your passwords that way. So most people don't have to worry about that kind of threat, except kind of in a random way. If you're a high-profile journalist, or high-profile celebrity, or you're running security inside OpenAI or something like that, those people have to worry about that. Like, that's the first thing they worry about. Who's trying to steal my passwords? Why? How are they going to do it? How am I going to protect myself from that? So there's a level of high security that people, another place, we get security guidelines from computer science from 20 years ago, 40 years ago. You also get security guidelines from people who are in high threat, environments. But if it's just you and your family, you trust your kids, Another thought, Danielle, is can your kids get your passwords out of your shared notes, on your phone? And what would they do with them? Okay, so
I don't even let my kids look at, I have like, okay, I don't even let my kids use my phone, use my computer, or use my tablet. I don't,
can they do it even without you knowing?
they don't have my passwords. They don't have, I also have Face
Um,
ID. I have
if you're asleep and they hold the phone in front of your face.
iPhones don't do that. You have to have your eyes open. You have to be aware.
Fair enough. So you've thought through this already.
Yeah.
So a password manager, so probably kind of the informal solutions y'all have got, they're probably fine. It's worth thinking through it. A couple things to think through. Is it easy for you to make random passwords and have different passwords for each system? That's a one button click in a password manager. It's a little bit harder when you're signing into a new system, and you've got your notes, and it's like, I'm just gonna like use a stupid password here, and then I'll change it later, and you never do. So creating different passwords for each system, keeping track of those, keeping track of usernames, which is what I mean by data structure, username, password, one-time password URL. Password Manager keeps track of all of these things all at once. So the notes, your Notes app is hard to do that with, and even if I guess a spreadsheet would work okay for this. Another thing with the Notes app on your phone or a Google Sheet or something like that, anything that you've got in the cloud, you kind of have to expect that if it's not encrypted, to Kenneth's point, if it's not encrypted, anybody who can hack into Google Sheets, which is probably not very many people, but you know, if there was a disgruntled Google employee or something like that, even then they've probably got ways to prevent against that. But if your passwords are like going through the cloud and they're not encrypted, there's a chance that it will be, you know, open to somebody who you don't want it to be. Another thing is if you get hit by a car or have a stroke or you die, have you just caused big problems for yourself or for your caretakers or for your heirs by locking up your passwords in a way that they won't be able to break into them? And then I put this one, this is the RJ one, who takes responsibility in the event of a breach. If you've got unencrypted passwords in Google Sheets, Google's going to be really sorry that they shared your passwords, but they have a less liability than, you know, they didn't tell you that it was okay to store private information in a Google Sheet, you know, or secret information, I guess. So password managers kind of answer all of these things pretty effectively. So you end up with one really good password, and then you write that down someplace and you put it in a secure place so you don't lose it. Maybe a safe deposit box, maybe in your important files at your home or something like that. They're easy and fun to use, and they kind of get you over the hump of a bunch of things. So 1Password is, I think, the easiest, and it's also not free. Bitwarden is almost as easy as 1Password, and they have a free tier. KeePass is open source, although a lot of times you buy a front end that's, you know, maybe a one-time $20 or whatever. The ones that have cloud stuff, usually they'll have a yearly fee rather than a one-time fee.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there any history of these password managers getting breached and or having insider?
Yep. Good question.
Yeah.
Let me type this. Let me answer that question after checking this. Proton password. Proton Mail is a really well-respected, kind of anonymous email service, and they've recently introduced password management, and so I think this is a good one too. RJ asked, you know, what's the history of so great. I've just put all my passwords in one place. I've made like this amazing honeypot of secrets. And what happens when that gets loose, right? So this is part of the reason LastPass is in the doghouse. This happened to them, and I think the story was they got hacked. Obviously, any of these, you know, vendors of password management are going to get a lot of people trying to hack them. So they got hacked. It was the most stupid way you could get hacked for a security company. So part of the deal with LastPass is they got bought by a some kind of hedge fund or something like that. You know, some kind of roll up that's just buying lots of companies. and they lost focus on, the people in charge lost focus. They somehow probably got a bean counter. He's like, why are we spending money on, the wrong things? And why, if you're in this super extreme high risk kind of situation, you have to be like you need to spend a lot of your resources just on making sure that you're not losing everybody else's secrets. And so you should be doing things like you should hire people all the time to try to break into your stuff, and see, how secure your stuff is against attacks. And you should have like really strict policies and procedures. LastPass got breached because one of, they set it up so the breach wasn't like your secrets, but it was your encrypted secrets, which is like, like one step away from kind of, depending on how their encryption works and things like that, it was way too close for comfort. And it was a stupid hack. They did this cool thing where only 3 people in the whole world knew the keys to the kingdom. So one of those people was a security, software, IT security expert. He had a VPN where he could log into his computers at home from other places, and it wasn't secure enough. So somebody got a worm through his firewall and got it installed, and got broke into his computer, and then his computer had the keys to the kingdom. And it's like, come on, guys, like that is wrong like 6 ways from Sunday. So it happens. I feel comfortable with 1Password and their security measures. I feel comfortable with all these, and don't take my word for it. Ask another expert maybe, or maybe take my word for it if you don't have. Anyway, I have to say LastPass was on my watch list for years before that breach. I had been in a situation in using it in an enterprise environment where it logged something that was impossible. I knew that I hadn't done something, and it logged that I had done it. And so it's like, okay, something in their data model and data management stuff is broken, and they're not careful enough. And I stopped using them right then. Danielle?
That reminds me of how, like, they say TikTok is always watching you. Like, it's watching things that it's not supposed to. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Doesn't that make sense? Like, yeah, it's doing things.
So, what part of that reminds you?
Well, because
Bella?
you know how, like, okay, I had something happen recently, like that I hadn't told anybody. And then
Yeah.
I saw something about it on TikTok, and I was like, that's what the hell? And so, like, that's like how
There's
you,
there's a there's a weird thing with the social media stuff and the things that you think are stalking you, and there are not always. Sometimes they might actually be stalking you, but
yeah,
you can leak information about something that you think is secret to
because the
something like
algorithm.
TikTok or whatever, social Facebook or whatever. You can leak that information in a way that you don't realize, and then when they feed it back to you, you go, they must have been listening to that conversation because I didn't tell anybody else. Um, I, I don't know if I could find it. Somebody actually wrote up a pretty detailed, way that, he thought it must be that Alexa or TikTok or somebody must have been listening to me. And I figured out how they found out that, I told that to a friend who I was sure wasn't going to tell anybody else, but they did a web search that made it so that, and it came back around that the thing that was secret leaked, and it wasn't actually somebody listening to you, the bots listening to you.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's lots of ways that stuff gets out, and so the people trusted with our passwords have to be very careful. So RJ asked another question: how do you trust a cloud-based password manager? And the way it works is they should be encrypting stuff locally on your machine, and So 1Password has a fairly long description. I know I've read it a number of times over the years. You know, here's why you can trust us, because just structurally, you know, even if I had a gun to my head, even if the CEO had a gun to his head, your secrets are encrypted in such a way that even if I had the keys to the kingdom and I had a gun to my head, I could not unlock your secrets. So they set it up so they do local encryption strong enough, and they have a, I'm going to say 1Password has another factor. I don't know about Bitwarden, but there's another secret key that you have that they don't, that makes it so it's just impossible for somebody to take anything that they have in the cloud and do anything with it. Even to the point, you have to think through this pretty carefully. You know, you don't even want to have a file that says Peter Kaminsky's secrets, because you don't want some attacker to break in and say, okay, now I know where Peter keeps his secrets. I can use that information to get another, you know, another step closer to his secrets in some other way. So they have to protect metadata and, you know, all kinds of stuff. RJ?
Well, that makes sense, but I think sometimes it can be more complicated and require more careful checking, because like lots of times I hear that people have concern about, let's say, using Zoom or something like that for private conversations, or using some other methodology for communicating that, and there'll be encryption, but for a certain part of it, there won't be encryption.
Yeah.
And there's vulnerabilities on certain parts. So I think people just need to know that although encryption is often used in part of the pathway, sometimes it isn't used in the entire pathway to the final endpoint. And you have to be careful because that's where it could possibly be vulnerable.
Yep. Um, so part of what we're doing here is, it doesn't have to be during sessions necessarily, but part of what we're doing here is kind of fleshing out the topic. I'm going to continue to kind of document and expand on this kind of stuff. One of the things RJ kind of touched on is when you say encrypted, you know, oh, your secrets are encrypted and they're safe with us. It's like, okay, so there's a long chain between, you know, this me and my secret and getting it used safely. And where does it need to be decrypted? Where is it decrypted and exposed potentially, and that kind of stuff. So you have to think through all that if you're a security analyst, I guess. So there's a term of art, encrypted at rest. Let's see, I guess encrypted locally. It can be hard to, part of the problem is that sometimes you, I don't know if I can think of a good example right now, but a lot of times encrypted secrets, they're just encrypted in the database or on the hard drive of the cloud, and they're not encrypted. So I guess if you wanted to edit something that's encrypted, for instance, and you have a cloud editor for that, the cloud editor needs the decrypted version of your secret. So it's like, okay, so now all of a sudden I have a whole new attack surface. You know, this cloud editor is a thing that you know has my decrypted secrets. So why should I trust that? So encrypted at rest means that it's encrypted in a database, but it's not encrypted between between systems. So um, so it's really important that your password manager does a lot of encryption locally and then only sends like opaque stuff up to the cloud.
I've been doing something stupid and trying to figure out how to raise my hand. I don't know how to do that in Zoom.
It's just
The heart
it's,
button, the heart button is the react button, and then there'll be a hand raise button at the bottom of the heart button.
while you're trying to figure out how to click that, Kenneth, I'll call on you. Kenneth?
All right. I just put in a couple of notes in the chat, one of which is that the Hacker Quarterly, Alt 2600,
Yep.
which has been the hacker resource, that's easy to get to for decades.
Yep.
They say that the best way, or usually the fastest and easiest way to get any kind of secured information is through social engineering.
Yep.
And
Very
they
true.
say that if you're the kind of person who's got post-it notes and your evil son-in-law wants to get the information on your computer, all he has to do is have someone act as a pizza delivery boy and knock the pizza over and then help you clean up. And meanwhile, he goes in and snaps a picture of your post-it notes.
Yep.
That kind of thing. So unless you're relying on a technological solution, which always have a small but definable risk, you're opening yourself up to social engineering methods of compromising your secrets.
Yep. Social engineering is the technical term for tricking somebody. There's a great I'll try to find it maybe. There's a great YouTube video of a security expert doing a social engineering attack on a phone company to get somebody's SMS, to be able to hack into somebody's SMSs, which got her more access. But anyway, it was super fun to watch because you're watching her as she's doing it. But if you imagine yourself being the rep on the other end of the phone line, the customer service rep at the phone company, it'd be like, yeah, I would totally, so it's a woman, she's talking about a crying baby, dude, all I need is like, this, all you need to do is this one thing for me. And she's got a recording of a baby. It's not a real baby, but the way she amps up the social situation and, like preys on the customer service reps humanity, it's really striking to watch. And people are very professional at social engineering. So a lot of scams and that kind of stuff are social engineering. Okay, so let's look back at, we're over time. I'm going to go until the half hour, so we'll be 2 hours altogether. Let's pick through and see what we should talk about real fast here.
And at some point, I'd like to know why Danielle's note app is not good enough, because mine's been working great, so.
It's good enough. And thanks for the focusing question, RJ. I'll continue to kind of make this better. The basic answer is using a password manager is easier, and it's easier actually, basically. So creating a random password, keeping track of the password, the username, the URL, the one-time password, all in one place it just makes it a lot easier. So that's the main thing. And then
Can I-
there are other benefits like you can delegate access in a way that is safe. You don't have to the incapacity or death thing. Is easy to manage, that kind of stuff. Danielle?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I actually only store, I don't, okay, so you know how you can, with iPhone, so I have all Apple products. I know that you don't, Pete, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so you can choose whether or not you want to share your Notes app onto your iPad or your MacBook. So I
Yep.
just keep them all on my phone. I don't share them onto my computer or my iPad. It's only on my phone. And that's because that's what I have with me all the time. I mean, it's backed up to the cloud, but it's not backed up on I mean, I could choose to access them and back it up that way because it's on the cloud, but it's not like accessible unless I like were to put in my password on my computer again. You know what I mean? Because you have to put in your password again on your computer in order to access it again if you were to have it open. Anyway, so I only have it accessible through my phone. And there also you can add another password on top of that on your app
Yep.
on your notes. If you wanted to put it in another folder inside your notes app, you could put it in a special folder that requires a different password on top of that.
But Danielle, what really is your problem though? Is it that you're not recording the passwords that
Just
you should be, or is
yeah,
it that you're maybe using multiple ways to password, like you can use a Google password, or you can use alternate password?
because ADHD, RJ. I mean, remembering to put them recording them, and making sure that I change them when it's forcing you to change your password when you're supposed to, or if I've gotten better. I've gotten better, okay? But everything now now that am opening my own business, I'm having to create so many new passwords for things and you have to make them more and more complex with you have to have uppercase, lowercase, this many symbols or this many whatever. And so it's just I've gotten better about recording them and I kind of have to put them all in one like single notes document for all and I'll designate like under which email address. So I've gotten better. So it's easier to search them. And I even put like a little locked symbol so I easily identify where all my passwords are in which document inside my notes app. So I've gotten better. I've gotten better.
Okay, so Peter, that makes me think of another point. How about a local password tracking system that's just on your own app and it's not in the cloud, but it does all of that, housekeeping stuff that Danielle just mentioned. It makes it easier to track your passwords locally on your own app.
Yeah, so that's KeePass, or one of the systems that uses KeePass. That's it's got a local file, and then it does password management based on local files. And then people sometimes share those through Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that, but you don't have to. There's another thing I've used called Clippers, which is a really clever thing. It uses, I guess it's actually a cloud one. It's not quite what you were talking about. The
I think Kenneth had a question too. He was gonna.
Yeah, sorry, Kenneth, I got distracted.
Danielle, do you have a facial recognition on your phone?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever taken a picture of your face?
Well, yeah.
They now have access to your password file.
They actually don't, because Apple's pretty good with their facial unlock.
Well, at one point
Um,
it was true that if
Yeah, the Apple devices actually do a 3D scan of your face, so they can tell the
They
difference
do the
between a
whole
picture.
like you have to go Yeah.
And it actually does a 3D scan. It's got lasers and stuff like that that does a
Yes.
depth map of
Even with like
the face
my
of your thing.
sunglasses
Okay,
to step on.
I didn't know that it had been fixed, but I do know that it was broken at one time.
Yeah, they've fixed it.
Uh,
Um,
but
And it has
Keith,
to make sure that you're aware too, like how Pete mentioned, even like it makes sure that you're aware too. So like your eyes can't be closed and they go like that. And we make sure you have to be aware too. And I think there's even a setting that you have to make sure with that as well.
well,
so
the other thing I was going to bring up is that if you have it all stored locally, the reason to use a password manager, in my view, is that you're trying to make it simple. It's same thing all the time. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about getting consistently more complex. You just say, give me a strong password. And on the 1 in 10,000 chance that your site won't accept that password, you say, give me another strong password, and it's done. And so it's ease of use makes it, you talked about having ADHD and that being a problem. Well, I'm saying this is the solution to being ADHD. It makes it easier to do. It makes it just the same simple pathway to getting a new password and recovering passwords and all that kind of thing.
So just having the
Well, like I say, I
manager
use
for
the
you.
Google password, but I know that if you're only using it for your browser stuff, then
Mhm.
using the Firefox or the Chrome browser, the Chrome uh, password manager. But like I say, I use the Google Cloud one.
Mhm.
It's called password.google.com.
Yeah, I use that.
Okay. But if you use that and that's all you ever use, then you don't have to worry about complex passwords or any of that. And it fills it in, even if it's not something on your browser. It's
I think what the problem I run into is making sure I'm logged into the right email address when I'm
that is true.
that's
That's a problem with
so
Google.
so that's another thing a password manager helps you with. So if I'm logging into Amazon is kind of a weird example, but if I'm logging into a site, it's like, okay, did I sign up with this as email? Did I use my Google email? How do I sign in with this? I think where Kenneth was going with that, and RJ, the reason to use a password manager is it's secure enough, but the real reason is simplicity and repeatability.
right.
Um, uh, so if I go to a website that I haven't been logged into for a decade, I type the website name into my password manager, and it's like, oh, this is the thing that you use to sign in with it. That old email that you don't use anymore, or this one I had to use a username and not an email ever, and all that kind of stuff. It's simple, straightforward, always the same interface for any of your secrets. Kenneth?
I actually do use multiple passwords, but not very often. And when I go into, I don't know, XYZ site, and I can't remember which password, Google Password will retain this password for this email address, this password for that email address, and so
Yeah.
forth. And then you can just pick the one you want.
Yeah,
And
and that's kind of, Danielle, you're starting to get into that where you've got a personal account and a business account, and which I'm logging into, Google, which username, which password, and they go together. I the Danielle, for you, if you can afford 1Password, I would use that, and it's kind of Apple native. They started off on Macs, so it's a little bit better on Macs and iPhones than on than on Windows, but it works great on Windows too. Anyway, if you can afford 1Password, buy 1Password, and if you can't afford it, use Bitwarden,
Is
and
that
just
the
start
one that
using it.
is that the one that's a one-time $20 fee? Which one's or is it the monthly fee one?
Keep has to be the one with, so Bitwarden has a $0 one. And you can actually share vault items with one other user. That's pretty cool. So let's look at 1Password real quick and what its pricing is. A thing that somebody had a deal, something that you always buy. There was 1Password for free or something like that.
You can
if you've
always
got,
share your passwords with me. I'm very trustworthy.
thanks, Kenneth. I don't know. This is kind of pricey, I guess. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth $36 a year, but Bitwarden is perfectly fine and it's secure and it's free. I've got a couple Bitwarden accounts. One of them personal, and then a couple business ones. And the business ones we actually spend money on them. Yeah, actually, this is worth it too. Anyway, pick one of those and start using it. And you don't have to switch over to everything right away, but start using it more and more. And it's worth it. It's worth it for the simplicity and the structure of it. And that's the main reason you would want it over Notes.
And usually these kinds of password managers, if you already have some other means of using the password, when you get ready to log in, you put in the username and the password manager will pop up and say, "Hey, do you want me to keep track of that?"
Yeah. I actually, and then it does the opposite too. If you go to a site and you're not logged in, it says, "Hey, do you want me to just log you in?" I actually don't trust the browser plugins for, I don't know, whatever reason. I don't use, 1Password has a nice, auto login for websites. I don't use it because I don't see how they can secure the browser plugin from bad guys, but I'm sure it works. And I think most people should probably just use a browser plugin. I do on my phone, I do have it on my Android phone. I have it set up so 1Password, if you're trying to log into something, it'll usually pop up and say, I can log in, I can enter the user. Actually, what it does is it says which password, which login do you want to use? Do you want to use your business one? Do you want to use a personal one? Whatever. Let's look at FoldRush real quick. Danielle's got a new business and she needed a landing page. And so with Danielle's help and with somebody who set up this image and ChatGPT, ChatGPT and me, we kind of did the same thing that we do with Jankifiers. Let's build a web page, but let's do particular things with it. And ChatGPT was really useful in building this, and we're going to build some more pages. No worries, Danielle. Danielle's on a phone. And then let's kind of wrap up. And Kenneth, what do you need to know for next time maybe, or the time after that? What's your next step with Obsidian?
Well, I was hoping that y'all could give me some kind of I don't know exactly what Obsidian does. So
Let's
I
do
just know
a
that
really quick.
well, let me just say what I wanted, and you tell me if it's necessary to
Okay,
test.
yeah, that's great. Yep.
I was looking for a way to set up a sharing network so that we could all share this document between sessions and make modifications to it, and those be flagged as modified, and so that I could, when I get ready to use GoatRush, or what it was called, Goat Rush and Fold Rush mixed up in my brain.
I know, right?
Goat,
Goat storytelling, yeah.
when I get ready to use goat, I want to be able to say, here's my scenes and here's my scene structure and here's my story structure, and set that up as a structure in Obsidian so that I can just say, oh, I want to do a new story. It's going to be the same kind of structure as my other one, and I'll just replace the scene information.
Yep. Who are you sharing? Who do you want to share with?
Well, initially you guys, and I'm not going to tell you who my secret sharers are. So, but basically,
Let
you guys initially.
instead of asking that as a question, let me tell you. So Obsidian is going to be brilliant for that use case. It's pretty. It's not. It's a little. It's a little weird. It's not weird is the wrong thing. It's very powerful, and so some of the like features are kind of hidden, or you have to get used to how to use them and things like that. It's not really hard, but it takes a little bit of mindset shift because it's got a lot of power. Uh, the basic Obsidian is for managing lots of text files, and it's actually markdown text files. So there's an editing pane in the middle, and then a file navigator pane on the left, and then another right pane, which has got different kinds of things. And you can turn those side things off if you want. So this gives you all you need to keep track of a bunch of files and edit them in different ways. You can split this so that you can be looking at two different text files at the same time and being, copying from one and pasting the other and all that kind of stuff. And the split thing is actually super. I wonder if I can do this. You can drag these tabs around to different places on the inside there, and you can split as much as you want.
Can I say,
Um,
I want to see the changes that have been made by the group since I last looked.
so there's a good news, bad news thing. Managing changes is hard. So that's the bad news. And because it's hard, it's a little bit complicated. The good news is that software developers manage changes in text files at a fine grain level all the time. They do it. They've been doing it for 40, 50 years, something like that. So if you don't mind using Git, then the answer is you've got all that you need and more.
Well, if I use Git, but you don't, am I
Yeah, and that's so with Obsidian, there's a plugin that this is the front end to the plugin. The plugin will do it manages Git for you. So these buttons up here are commit and push and pull. It's also got stage all, push, add all, remove all. This is a magic button that does almost everything. It does the add, commit, push all at the same time.
okay. That's how Git works. But is RJ going to have to know that in order to be able to?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of getting there. I've been doing and no worries, I go slow and roundabout. I'm a software developer, so I know Git really well. I've been teaching, and this Git plugin works really well. These buttons are actually in the wrong order, and the developer doesn't want to fix them because they like them this way. I'm this close to forking this and having a plugin that just has the same thing that just has these buttons in a better order. Anyway, the Git plugin works really well. So I've been teaching people, non-technical people, to use Obsidian and this Git plugin, and I've been reasonably successful. The hard parts are, maybe let me back up. If I need to collaborate with somebody who's not Git savvy, kind of the best, actually the thing that I've been doing is just teaching them Obsidian is one level, and then showing them this and saying click this whenever you need to put changes back for the group. Click this when you need to get changes from the group. And if you get a weird error message and stuff, just stop and ping me, send me a message, and we'll sort it out. So that actually works. I've got a number of people, probably 10 or so people who are non-technical, who are using Obsidian and Git and do just perfectly fine. So now the next question we should have is, what if RJ or whoever doesn't want to use Obsidian, because Obsidian itself is a whole kind of deal, right? The best answer I have is that what you do is keep all this in, all this is managed with Git, and then there's a GitHub repo, or it could be any, it could be GitLab, it could be Codeberg, it could be whatever. By the way, another thing I've written along with a buddy is, you can take any Obsidian Vault, it's called. Obsidian Vault is just a collection of markdown files in folders. You can take an Obsidian, and it's got wiki links too. So you put double square brackets around a thing and it makes links, which is amazing. You can take any Obsidian Vault and publish it as a website. So a lot of the websites I build nowadays are actually just Obsidian Vaults, and we have multiple people managing them. In this group, we've got Scott kind of leveled up so that he's able to edit stuff on Obsidian and push it to the website. For open source websites like this, in the footer, I recommend that people put a link to the repo. And coming back to answer your question finally, what if, say, RJ wants to edit a file on here but doesn't know about Git? If you can teach them to go to the right page on, let me do this one actually. If you can teach them to go to the right page on GitHub and ignore all of GitHub except the things that they really need. It's got way too much stuff going on here, but you can say, go to the correct page, click this button here, make any edits you want, and then click save. And your changes will get, into the story, right? Commit changes. So that's our current hack. And let me show you a little hack that we've got on top of that. This is a work and development thing. If you're on one of these websites, which we call wikis, if you're on one of these websites, we've got a work in progress thing where you actually go to the right page with the editing thing open. So we've short circuited that, have to get to the right page, have to know all this works. They still need a GitHub account, but they can edit this page or not. Without knowing how to get into GitHub, how to get the right page, all that kind of stuff. So that's where we are. The other choice is Google Docs and a set of folders, and that gets insane really fast. HackMD itself, I use HackMD for in the moment collaborative editing, and then this will get saved off to each of these pages start as a HackMD thing. It's super simple. You save from HackMD, you drag it over and drop it on the Obsidian Vault that you're putting it into, and then click push, and it gets up on the web. So all of these are, the reason I use HackMD is because it's part of the whole ecosystem. It allows for collaborative editing during a meeting, but then it also saves to Obsidian and the web.
And Obsidian is web-based, and
Obsidian is desktop.
okay, well,
and
then I missed something.
well, we did a whole bunch of things all at once.
Okay. All right. So
Let me,
GitHub is web-based and you use GitHub with
Git- GitHub
Obsidian, and
is,
that's how you do it.
yeah. Let me show you the diagram here. This is the, I'm going to put this in chat and maybe you can save the whole chat or something. But this is the way I use Obsidian and Git and GitHub and something called Massive Wiki Builder, which turns the shared markdown files into a website. So some people might be using Obsidian, some people might be using Typora, which is another editor, or Emacs or whatever, or TextEdit or Bear, or there's a bunch of markdown editors that you can use. You don't have to use Obsidian. Obsidian lets you do wiki links between the pages, which is really useful. Obsidian has just a ton of other features too, like hashtags. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things. So I don't know. I don't know of a better suite of stuff. And so if you go to this website, this is the website I've been maintaining for Learn and Do. It used to be called AI 101, and I've left the website called AI 101. If you go to this website, over here is Pete's Tools. I started keeping track of the top level tools I use, and under text-based information management, this is the suite of stuff that I use that we just talked through. Obsidian also has a mobile version. They have their own sync stuff. So if you're working a lot with, if you want people to edit one page, this, well, I don't know if that's the right, this hack, having them edit via GitHub is actually pretty good. For somebody who just wants to do like one time. If it's a team that you're collaborating with, then there's a thing called Obsidian Sync, which is Obsidian's native sharing thing. And so it's not really meant for teams. It's meant for one person, but I'm using it successfully with teams, and I think they do too sometimes. And in fact, I've got a team where we were using Git and we just stumbled over ourselves too much. There were two most of us were non-technical, so we switched to Obsidian Sync, and now we're all happy again. The trick with Obsidian Sync is you don't get the Git-based, change management. Obsidian Sync just tries to make sure that the pages are the same on each device it could be multiple people. But then that causes problems. The way we've ended up managing that is a lot of our pages have our initials as part of the file name. So I'm PK. Then I have, there's WE, and then there's ML. So you'll see ML what's new, or ML thoughts about this character, something like that, because he wants to make sure that if we have the same page name, we'll collide. If you're using Git, that's actually not too much of a problem, and it's kind of a good thing to be able to keep track of together. If you know Git and you're capable with it, you can do things like Git branches and stuff like that, and just do turbocharged collaboration, right? But you have to get your whole team up on Git. So Obsidian Sync is a way to start off with a team that isn't Git compatible and won't be.
Okay.
The way
That's
to
very
get
useful
started,
information.
yeah, it's super, it's a joy to use, a wonderful ecosystem to get into. The way to start with Obsidian, there's actually, I've got a, now that I think about it, I've got a Obsidian introduction that you can buy for $0. It's a 29-minute, kind of here's how I would get started with it. there's part of a, there's even a shorter introduction somewhere that's buried right now in by the way, these websites get hosted for free as well. I don't know, I'll have to find it. I did like the 5-minute introduction to Obsidian, and don't start the way that it's obvious, start the way that, you know, start actually using it. That was a better way to do it. Sorry, it's not available right away. It's in there somewhere. I don't know exactly where. The thing to do to get started with Obsidian is just do Obsidian beginner. And you'll find a bunch of good stuff. Another way to do it, by the way, anything that Nick Milo has done is awesome. He's definitely worth watching. So Obsidian beginner is one way to search. Another way to do it is to search for Obsidian and some of the things that that are competitors. So Rome is an older competitor now. But you can get people comparing Notion and Obsidian and Logseek. Maybe they'll sell you away from Obsidian, but a lot of times Obsidian ends up being the, you know, the one that you kind of narrow. This is a good example. Rome research is great. Here's why I've switched to Obsidian. This is another great one, Notion versus Rome versus Obsidian versus Remnote. This is actually a good video to get started with. Lean on YouTube to get started with Obsidian. It's super helpful. Even if YouTube isn't your favorite thing, there's just a ton of great information there. Yeah.
One last thing. I expected Learn and Do to be hands-on. We're going to do a project together,
Yep.
and we didn't have that today.
It turns out that usually we don't. I end up in teaching mode, and we do a little bit of exercises together, but a lot of it is learned. Comes first, and even then it's more teach, right? We definitely have done kind of group things together, and Obsidian would be a fun one. Yeah, anyway,
Okay.
we do sometimes. Obsidian actually was one where we did some things together. Jenkifiers, we've been doing a fair bit together. We haven't got our rhythm yet on group projects, though. Or I haven't gotten mine. I end up presenting more.
Well, thank you. You were informative. I appreciate it.
It may be on Monday. It kind of depends who's here and what we're interested in and what's top of mind for me and for others. It may be that Monday we could do, you know, like a 15 or 20 minute, hey, let's get started with Obsidian and set it up.
What time Monday?
Offhand, I don't know. Let me
Okay.
share my screen. By the way, the sessions also get scheduled. I unfortunately not as with as much advance warning as I'd like. It's sometimes I leave it until the last day or two before. Anyway, Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific.
Okay.
And then not again until 10 days later. One last thing on Obsidian. Oh, a thing that is really good with Obsidian, the ChatGPT exporter I use has, well, ChatGPT thinks in Markdown, basically. Let me try to find.
I know that I have saved files from ChatGPT into Markdown.
Yeah, if you export a whole bunch all at once, I'm not seeing it right off here. I think I've switched things around. It turns out that you can export all your ChatGPT conversations to a set of Markdown files, which basically turns into an Obsidian vault, and then you can use Obsidian to search through, and if you want to annotate or link or whatever, add hashtags to all of your ChatGPT conversations. So another thing you can do with Obsidian. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you around again, Kenneth. Thanks, RJ, for sticking with us.
Thank you. This has been really great. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. We'll see you around. Maybe see you Monday.
Take
Thanks.
care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.